everyone, welcome back to The Sound of Speed. My name's Garrett. Today I'm going to be taking you through a little bit about my Project 996 Turbo, some of the modifications I've done, overall just a brief overview of the car. Hope you enjoy. So as I promised, today's video is going to be all about the car. I actually took the car to the track yesterday, but I'm not going to post that yet, so you're going to have to stay tuned until I post that video to see how the car did at the track. Alright, a little bit of history about the car. I purchased the car roughly 4 years ago. At the time it had about 48,000 miles on it. The car is a 2003 911 Turbo. I was actually just driving by the local Porsche dealership here in town and noticed the car. I'd been looking for about a year trying to find something that was kind of in my budget and something that checked all the boxes in terms of options. So I saw this car, it was in the parking lot, gave it a quick look over with my wife. It was pretty dirty, looked like really it hadn't been taken care of at all. So when I asked the salesman about it, he said that they had taken it in trade about 3 months prior and the lot attendant had lost the key. So they hadn't been able to move it or unlock it, they hadn't been able to detail it or sort of work on it. They pretty much just took it in as trade and it sat there. So fast forward about a week later, he calls me and says the previous owner who traded in the vehicle, they were able to get a hold of him and sort of ask him if by chance he had a spare key. They were able to get the key from the previous owner. He calls me a week later and says, listen, we haven't put any money into this, we haven't detailed it, we haven't done anything. I'll give you sort of first shot at it and hopefully we can make a deal work. He was able to give me an awesome price on the car. Steal. Luckily, I think I bought the car right at about the bottom of the market for these cars. They've been going up in the last few years since I've owned it. I think it's worth slightly more now than when I purchased it, which is great, outside of the mods. So I get this perfect deal on my dream car. I couldn't be more ecstatic. I thought it was fast, it was sexy, it was kind of everything I wanted in a car. That obviously didn't last long. Within, I think, 2 or 3 months, I had purchased exhaust for the car. It had some exhaust on it at the time when I bought it, and it really, really wasn't good. It had a terrible sound to it. It was kind of a hack job that was done in someone's garage. They had pretty much just gutted the mufflers and it was pretty rough sounding. So within 2 or 3 months I had an exhaust, and then obviously after that I had to get a tune, and that lasted about a year and a half, I think, of just enjoying the car as it was, driving it on the weekends, actually driving it daily, driving it to work every day. I could, drive it fast, drive it slow. It was just fun to drive. It was the best sort of all-around car I'd ever had. I drove it in the snow a couple of times, which was interesting. It is all-wheel drive still. So the car is capable of snow travel. They do it in Germany a lot, so I've been told, people get these and drive them through the Alps, and they're their sort of snow vehicle. They put a ski rack on them, and they do pretty well. I thought it was a little sketchy, to be honest, but hey, to each their own. So I did that a couple of times, drove it for a while, and just enjoyed the car. Naturally, I didn't last long with just exhaust and a tune. Since I cannot leap well enough alone, or so my wife says, I had to get new parts. So I planned this sort of big build on the car, really just taking it from that first level, entry level tune and exhaust to something that would be an all-around just amazing car, super high performance, able to compete on the highest level with new Ferraris, new Lamborghinis, pretty much anything it came across. So I started planning this big build. Over the course of a year, I started gathering parts, anything I needed OEM to replace while I was in there, and planned to pull the engine out myself and replace a whole bunch of things. So any big project is going to have a big parts list. What all did I replace on the car? I think the biggest thing was the turbos. Getting bigger turbos in there, going to send more air, spool faster, get the power to the ground better. That was sort of number one. So I kind of built all this plan around bigger turbos. The turbos that I used were Borg Warner EFR 7163 turbos. These turbos are capable of roughly 550 horsepower, 600 horsepower each turbo. So essentially I've got enough turbo in there for 1100 horsepower, probably 1000 to the wheels. Now naturally I don't make that much power because the stock engine can't handle it, but if I were to upgrade down the future, I could technically. Now I'm not yet at least. So the turbos were kind of where I started. The next sort of things came fueling, so I needed to have plenty of fuel. I wanted to be able to run E85 fuel, which is an ethanol blend, which allows you to run higher octane, cooler combustion temperatures and make more power with more timing safely. My biggest concern for this entire build was safety. I wanted to make a lot of power, but I wanted to do it in the most efficient way possible. The next upgrades were all about air. So I purchased new 4.5-inch intercoolers from Silly Rabbit Motorsports. I purchased their aluminum Y-pipe kit, their throttle body, their air intake plenum. I also purchased their fuel system, which is a brushless fuel pump and controller that's capable of right around 1,000 horsepower. I also got some Injector Dynamics ID 1300 injectors. I purchased their Tilton triple plate clutch kit and chromoly flywheel. So that thing is good for, I think, upwards of 1,000 foot-pounds of torque and roughly around the same horsepower. So that clutch is actually 3 individual clutch plates that all work together and clamp down on the pressure plate and flywheel and really get a strong hold. So a very, very strong clutch that's going to be able to hold all the new power. Obviously, making a lot of power isn't just all about adding air and adding fuel. I had to do a lot of maintenance to the car. So I went through, flushed all the fluids, new spark plugs, new coils. While I had the engine out, these cars are somewhat notorious for these coolant pipes that are actually press fit into the engine. They were press fit into the engine by Porsche and then glued in from there. What happens is, after time and miles and heat cycles on the car and high RPM kind of pressure on those coolant pipes, they tend to come out of the engine in somewhat of a catastrophic way. So a lot of people end up on the racetrack at full throttle near red line and one of these coolant pipes bursts. And the biggest problem with this is your rear tires are back there. So suddenly you lose all of your coolant within a matter of seconds and you're in a dangerous situation. If you get lucky enough that the coolant doesn't spray on your tires, normally you're at least going to spray down the track behind you, and anyone behind you is in trouble. So I went ahead, and what you do is you actually drill the fittings that are in the engine and you tap them and put like a set screw with some anti-seize on it. So even if that glue releases, you've got kind of a lock in there that stops the separation from the engine. So at worst case, it's gonna maybe weep a little bit of coolant, but it's not gonna be catastrophic sort of coolant loss that can either end in, engine failure or overheating, or, you can end up crashing. So did that while I had the engine out, just as kind of preventative maintenance in addition to all the other things. Also, while I was in there, lots of sort of coolant pipes and things pop up. There's, vacuum lines that need to be replaced. They're 15 years old. Lots of odds and ends that kind of add up quickly. So at the end of the day, I ended up with pulling the engine in March, and it was back in the car right around end of July, early August. So roughly a 5-month project. After that, I sent the car off to get tuned in Las Vegas at Silly Rabbit Motorsports. They were able to make 600 horsepower to the wheels on 91 pump octane, and I took delivery of the car shortly after that. And the car's running a ProEFI 112 standalone ECU. This ECU gives me a lot of functionality. Not only does it allow me to be able to run E85 in a flex fuel configuration, so I could run 91 pump octane, or I can run all the way up to E100 pure straight ethanol, but the ECU gives me a lot of safety features. So it gives me enhanced traction control that stops the wheels from spinning, stops any sort of calamity from happening when the power is coming on. Also has a lot of sort of set-in safeties and triggers. So say the oil temp gets too high, or the oil pressure gets too low, or the transmission temp gets too high, the car is going to sort of shut itself down and intervene before any damage happens. It also allows me to do things like on-the-fly boost control, so I have 5 selectable settings. I'll show you that right now. So you'll see the tachometer is going to move for each different boost setting. So I'm currently on boost setting 5. I hold down the cruise control stalk, and it's going to show me I'm at 5. I hold it again, and it's going to move to 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then back. So this allows me to have 5 different selectable boost settings while I'm driving without having to adjust the boost controller or anything. It also controls the ignition timing, the fuel delivery, the airflow, everything sort of that makes the engine run, the ProEFI is in control of. It's a great system, I absolutely love it. It also has features like 2-step and launch control. So the 2-step allows me to set an RPM limit that I want to stay at while I'm stationary, and it allows the car to build boost while I'm standing still and I won't have any turbo lag. So I can let it go in first gear and I'll already be in boost with no turbo lag. So I set an RPM limit, it targets a boost threshold, and I can be sitting here with my foot to the floor and it's not going to go over a certain RPM, like so. There's also similar functionality called rolling anti-lag. So if I click up on the e-brake, just one click, before the brake actually engages, it will keep the car still at whatever mile per hour you're currently at and allow the car to build boost while you're rolling in gear, and then you click that e-brake down and you launch and take off. It gets rid of all the sort of historic problems with turbo cars, having to spool up the turbos and get the engine going before they're actually making power. This allows me to do it at any time I want. Through some research online, I decided to go with a tuner based out of the East Coast. His name is Garth Ruge. He works at Tooned is his business, so he tunes Porsches, GTRs, kind of anything that's fast. He works with multiple different platforms, Cobb, ProEFI. He's a really good guy. He's helped me out over the last 9 months dialing in this car remotely. So I'm able to pull logs of data from the car and send them off to him in email, and he can make adjustments and kind of see how the car is running even though he's not here personally, and send me back a new file with adjustments that make the car run better. So it's been a great experience. He's been super helpful, kind of gone above and beyond to make sure the car's running really, really good. At the end, the car at the dyno about 2 weeks ago made 731 horsepower under the wheels and 705 foot-pounds of torque. So that about wraps it up. Gave you an overview of the car, the modifications, kind of my history of the car. Thanks for watching. In an upcoming video, I'm going to go over some of the plans I have for the future potentially of the car, what I'm looking forward to, maybe some potential modifications in the winter once things get too cold to drive and I can take it apart. Until next time, thanks for watching, and hit subscribe, hit like, and there's more to come. Thanks.